Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. And I thought I'd give a little bit of an update to this Seiko World Time clock I bought. Must be 3 years ago now. It was $20 on eBay. And the other day, it actually stopped. It's got that lovely sweeping seconds on the hand there. So you got all the time zones around the dial. It actually stopped, and now it's started again, and I don't know why it's... But anyway, I'm still absolutely loving it, and going strong. I've only actually changed the battery, I think, once in the 2 or 3... I think it's about 3 years now, so... Anyway, guys, just goes to show you can get some amazing clocks on eBay for next to nothing. Fingers crossed it still runs, and I'll give you guys an update later on. Anyway, let's roll the intro and get on with the show. Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Today, a very quick video. Well, I'll try and make it quick. I just want to share with you what is, in my opinion, the most significant and important watch released this year, and possibly, well, for me, it's the most important release of the decade. But then again, I'm biased because this is a very important brand close to my heart. In a moment you'll see why, but also simultaneously a little bit sad because the emphasis with the industry has been very much on Baselworld, and it has unfortunately overshadowed this historic and extremely significant moment in horological history. Before I completely forget, I'll do a wristwatch check. I'm wearing the Nakin, the NTH Nakin. I saw a post online the other day with somebody wearing it, and I just thought, oh God, I gotta wear it today. So yeah, really enjoying it. One of my favorite micro brands. I'm still absolutely loving it. So without further ado, let's change perspectives and have a closer look at this achievement. So here it is. The Charles Frodsham Double Impulse Chronometer Wristwatch. Now this is really something special. I cannot stress that enough. So who's Charles Frodsham? If you're not familiar with the brand, well, if you're familiar with my channel, you might be, because I actually started off this hobby when I inherited my grandfather's Charles Frodsham pocket watch. So Charles Frodsham, quite incredibly, remains in existence to this day and is famed for being the longest continuously trading firm of chronometer manufacturers in the world. Astounding achievement, considering they carried on despite the complete evaporation, I guess you could say, of the clock-making industry around them. If you're not familiar with British watchmaking history, England in particular, the English in the 17th, 18th, and then to a certain extent the 19th century was the epicenter of watchmaking. One only has to think of John Arnold, Thomas Mudge, John Harrison, of course, Thomas Tompion, George Graham, and all the rest of them. So Charles Frodsham was from London originally, and he founded his business in 1834. A distinguished English horologist, specializing originally in pocket watches and marine chronometers, but then evolved into making clocks in the 20th century. And some of these have been owned by various members of the British royal family. And actually, I inherited some Frodsham clocks as well. These days, the brand is owned by horologists Philip White and Richard Stenning, although some of Charles Frodsham's descendants are still employed or involved in the company. So the Charles Frodsham Watch Company has been predominantly involved in restoration, restoring classic clocks, and even building replicas of famed Harrison marine chronometers. So this is their first actual wristwatch, although Frodsham did experiment with wristwatches with a handful of British military prototypes, I believe in the 1940s. Now, what makes this watch so unique is, well, it's a return to high quality English watchmaking. It's been 16 years in the making. The realization of concepts devised by some of history's greatest watchmakers, including Breguet, George Daniels, to name a few. But this is all entirely in-house made, handmade in England, which is quite astounding and really unheard of these days, especially at this level. The idea for the movement was suggested by Derek Pratt, a contemporary of George Daniels, which we all know of from his famous coaxial escapement, which we've discussed many times. So this watch contains the Daniels double impulse escapement, which is in a way similar to the famed detent escapement, which was extremely popular during the era of marine chronometers, as it is almost frictionless. But unlike the detent escapement, it operates with twin impulses rather than the single unidirectional impulse. The double wheel escapement was originally invented by Breguet, which George Daniels successfully installed in a handful of his own timepieces, including the Space Traveler that sold, I believe, last year for a staggering $4.3 million. So the basic idea of the double impulse escapement is fairly straightforward. Each escape wheel is driven by its own gear train and barrel and turns in opposite direction from each other. Both escape wheels operate against a detent, which is in between the two. And the motion of these parts is radial, rendering it almost frictionless, which is why the escapement is lubrication free. This contrasts to the sliding action that we have all come to know and love by the typical Swiss lever or lever escapement, and that obviously needs oiling. So the style of the watch is very much based on a 1900s Charles Frodsham pocket watch, which contained a tourbillon regulator, and that featured a very similar dial design. This was later made into a carriage clock, I believe, for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Now the case is 42 millimeters. It has a height of 10.5 millimeters, including sapphire crystals on both the front and the back. It's available in steel, 18 karat rose or white gold, as well as an unusual 22 karat yellow gold. Now, despite the higher purity, the 22 karat alloy is as hard as 18 karat gold because it has been forged and then hand rolled. All precious metals, they are hallmarked in that very typical English style, and I really appreciate that because it does remind me of the hallmarks on my grandfather's pocket watch. The dial, rather surprisingly, is not enamel this time. We have ceramic. An enamel is obviously the more traditional, like my grandfather's pocket watch, but it is prone to cracking. The ceramic has been chosen here specifically for its robustness. We have applied blued numerals. You can get it in a choice of Romans or Arabic numerals. The Arabic numerals are beautifully done, slightly more modern than I expected, but very sharp and elegant all the same. I love the way the rail track is on the inside rather than the outside of the dial. We have these stunning blued hands that are almost more towards the kind of purple hue, with a spade-tipped hour hand and an extremely simple pointer for the minutes. We get a sub-dial there at the 6 o'clock. Very, very typical, again, echoing the classic pocket watch style, very much like my grandfather's. Something quite unusual is the crown. It's positioned this time between 2 and 3 o'clock. This was a consequence of the movement's construction, although it does apparently also help prevent the crown digging into the back of the wrist. Again, a little bit of modernity, I feel, it gives the watch. The movement really is the star of the show here, and there is no ostentatious over decoration. It's decorated very minimally, and I think this is deliberate because the emphasis is really on the mechanics. The movement speaks for itself. The variety of different materials and finishings here is done just enough to help differentiate the different parts and wheels, etc. So I think it actually gives more emphasis on the escapement itself, which takes pride of place and has a lovely line of symmetry running through it. The movement is hand wound, of course. It's hackable. 36-hour power reserve, runs at 21,600 beats per hour. Apart from the double impulse chronometer escapement, the movement also has some other really cool features, including a proprietary balance staff that is designed longer and narrower than you typically expect, offering a greater lateral shock resistance. The brake is also linked to a very discreet snail-shaped power reserve indicator if you look quite closely. All the wheels are 18 karat rose gold, with all the steel components made of a high carbon steel alloy that is being tempered in-house in a small oven. The detent itself is titanium and astonishingly weighs as much as a sesame seed, while the balance wheel is temperature resistant copper alloy with tungsten adjustable weights. My favorite feature has to be the 3-armed balance bridge, which is rounded and polished. It's nothing like your conventional straight bridge. This has been entirely manually finished. It's also just beautiful to look at. But not only that, what I adore about this watch is that it's so British in its styling, understated, and yet it has that link to the greatest age of British watchmaking with this modern interpretation of one of the most important escapements in history. It also has the involvement of some just absolute legends in watchmaking. It's beautifully executed. It's a wonderful amalgamation of modernity and yet ultra classicism. It's a watch that makes British watchmaking proud. It really does. So tastefully done. So how much does this go for? Well, in steel, it's £60,000. In 18 karat rose or white gold, it's £64,000, and £65,500 for hardened 22 karat yellow gold. Now, there are only 10 to 12 of these being made every year, and the current lead time is about 12 months, and you have to order it directly from Charles Frodsham & Co. Limited in London. So it also boasts exclusivity, time-honored materials, techniques, but yet has cutting-edge watchmaking, while still being so faithful to the heritage of this incredible brand. A capo lavoro, absolute pure class. So let's take it back to the studio. It was important to highlight this moment on the channel. It seems to have been completely ignored by the established watch media, much to their detriment, really, because it just goes to show that if you're not one of the big boy brands and if you're not paying to be featured in every single article, you just don't get mentioned, which is a real shame, because this is an important moment for not only British watchmaking, but horologically speaking, historically, and the actual movement, the actual innovation that's going on. But anyway, I doff my imaginary cap to the few watch blogs that did cover it, and funnily enough, it was mentioned in the New York Times, which is quite, it just shows you, at least they're paying attention, right? Very strange turn of events that it's not, being talked about, and I guess just bad timing that Baselworld is happening at the same time. I think the news about the Charles Frodsham broke, I think, a month ago or so. But I guess the big question is, has my, long-term grail changed? Well, Baselworld hasn't really, changed anything for me. I mean, there's some incredible watches that have been released. Guys, if you'd like to see my opinion or top 10 perhaps, or maybe is it just played out? I don't know. Is it worth going over? I'm kind of a little bit bored of it already myself, and it's ongoing as I'm recording this. But yeah, there's been some wonderful releases, a few kind of predictable ones, a few, you know, out of nowhere, left field type releases as well. Anyway, guys, thoughts, queries, comments, opinions, all the rest of it down below. Thank you so much for watching. What was your highlight of Baselworld, and what is the most exciting watch released this year so far? It doesn't have to be Baselworld, but mine definitely has got to be the Charles Frodsham. I mean, well, you know why. If you know this channel, you know why. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, found it useful, and as always, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.